What are the most important fantasy football takeaways from the conference championship games? What do we think about the Chiefs and Eagles moving on to Super Bowl 57? And what's up for the offseason for the Bengals and 49ers? It's time to break it down right here, right now, as we begin another week and another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. We have the fallout from the championship games on Sunday. So the Eagles get a big break. The 49ers lose two quarterbacks, Brock Purdy and Josh Johnson. The Eagles do it on the ground, dominate there, do it with their defense, and they advance 31-7. Winning that NFC game. So same score that they had over the Giants in the divisional playoffs. So the number one seed in the NFC is going on to the Super Bowl 57 in Glendale, Arizona in a couple of weeks. And from the AFC side, the form held as well. The number one Chiefs are moving on here. They win on the last second field goal by Harrison Butker, 23-20 over the Bengals, avenging last year's defeat to Cincinnati in Kansas City in the AFC Championship game. So Eagles, Chiefs, pretty darn good Super Bowl. The first time we've had two number one seeds playing for it all, and that ring since the Eagles did it over the Patriots in Super Bowl 52 with Nick Foles. So very exciting matchup ahead as we're getting ready for that. More offensive fireworks. We knew the offense was going to be good, and it turned out to be pretty good in some cases. We lost the 49ers' entire attack there without a competent passing quarterback. But the defenses definitely showed up. There were some key moments for some players in the Bengals-Chiefs game, more so than the Eagles game. But what we're going to do here is a breakdown of what we saw in those games. So first, we're going to look at the winners. So we'll break down the Eagles and what happened with them in that matchup against the 49ers that allowed them to win. Some takeaways there going into the Super Bowl. And maybe a little bit look ahead to the offseason. Same thing with the Chiefs. We'll do that in our second segment as they move on and they get a little bit more love here on the show as the team's playing Super Bowl 57, kind of setting the table early for what we can expect based on what we just saw from those teams. And then we'll finally close looking at the 49ers and Bengals, kind of set the table for tricky offseason ahead. They have different quarterback questions in San Francisco and Cincinnati. So we'll talk a little bit about what are some concerns there that are related to fantasy football with those two teams. So looking at a lot here on the show, we'll dive right into it. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We're free and available to you on all platforms. Today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. We have one more game to do so to get in the action in the Super Bowl. Pick 2 to 6 players. They score more or less than their PrizePicks projection. You can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match of $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. So it was a pretty good week in a lot of the ways for PrizePicks and our picks of the week. And it was a little tougher because we didn't get enough offensive resistance from the 49ers to help the Eagles put up the numbers. And the grinding nature of these games made it a little bit difficult. But it was still a lot of fun to watch. And congratulations to the Eagles and Chiefs. Let's dive into what we saw from the Eagles. Jalen Hurts did not have one of his better games. He didn't turn the ball over, which was key, but it was hard to do that when they had a big lead here early and they controlled the action. Only 121 yards passing. I thought he was going to be required to pass a lot more, but I also thought the 49ers would score more and present some reasons for Hurts to put the ball in the air. But they got to a really conservative game plan, but it was evident the 49ers offense was just Christian McCaffrey and not much else there. Once Purdy went down in the first series with the elbow injury, couldn't throw the ball more than 5 yards. And then you had Josh Johnson come in. He was just cold. He'd been on the team since early December, so you didn't expect a lot from him. He was overwhelmed a little bit by running the offense, and that was that. And the 49ers just couldn't stay in the game at all once it was tied 7-7 It was all Eagles from that point as they scored 24 points. The Eagles, again, weren't all that aggressive. They just kind of grinded the game away, knew the 49ers had no shot to win it. So that's why you didn't have the big numbers from Hurts. He did get the rushing touchdown on a nice little run there to kind of give the game full control to the Eagles there. 11 rushes for 39 yards and a TD. Not great rushing production in terms of efficiency, under 3.5 yards per carry, but it's notable that Jalen Hurts did have that touchdown. We also had 2 from Miles Sanders, not a lot on the ground. He got 42 yards rushing on 11 carries, so we were good on the Sanders total there. We didn't think Sanders was going to hit a high total, and we thought Gainwell would do a little bit more, and we got Gainwell there. So we liked that with our PrizePicks and the way we were looking at the numbers for these Eagles running backs. So 49ers did contain Sanders on the ground in terms of total yardage, but they used Sanders twice in the red zone there to bring his fantasy value up to level here. But Kenneth Gainwell did lead the team in rushing. He had 14 carries for 48 yards, coming off the first 100-yard game of his career in the divisional playoff win over the Giants. So pretty good for Gainwell, 14 for 48, but he also had 2 catches for 26. Remember, his number was at 7 receiving yards. Well, he shot past that easily. We said he would do it with 1 catch. Well, he got 2 catches, went all over that with 26 yards. So we were digging into the weeds a little bit, and we also had Deebo Samuel carry the ball a little bit out of necessity because Elijah Mitchell didn't play. So very interesting developments there with the backup running back situations. Speaking of backup running backs, the Eagles could go deeper this game. We didn't think we were going to see a key Boston Scott appearance in mop-up duty, but he also got a touchdown this game. So we had all the touchdowns on the ground here for the Eagles, 4 touchdowns, and Hurts runs in 1, Sanders 2, Scott 1. So not much in the way of the receivers here. We had Devonta Smith to make that big play, that 29-yard catch that shouldn't have been ruled a catch. He was fortunate to have that number down the sideline that set up the Sanders touchdown on the Eagles' first drive. Well, he only had 1 more catch after that for 7 yards. So they didn't need Devonta Smith, force the ball downfield at all. The 49ers had some really good coverage, contained the deep ball. And again, the Eagles just saw the 49ers were going to be no contest in this game. So they kind of just went away from the pass game. That's why the low numbers were there. They just kind of stayed on the field. Once they had the lead and the 49ers didn't have a shot at coming back, it really hurt these receivers and their ability to do anything. So again, you need 2 offenses to go back and forth a little bit to create some of that passing numbers, and you didn't really have that. So 2 for 36 for him, only 4 for 28 for A.J. Brown. He had a nice play early in the game, but they didn't involve him enough here. They didn't need to. And then so those 2 guys doing a lot. Dallas Goedert, barely a blip on the radar. We've talked about how good the 49ers have been covering the tight end. So we didn't figure they were going to throw much to him here. So very conservative game plan, and they took a few shots, but that was about it, and the Eagles could not have it up. Now, in the Super Bowl, I think they'll have some better success here. Keep in mind that you had Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Hayden Hurst. That combination, Tyler Boyd leaving that game really helped the Chiefs because he was doing things in the slot. But you have Smith, who can work the slot at times. You got A.J. Brown on the outside, Goddard in the middle of the field. I think Goddard is still a more dynamic athlete than Hurst and can stretch the field a little bit more. So I like their chances to have a bigger game. And we know that Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are going to push Hurts to put the ball in the air a little bit more and not this conservative game plan and handing off. So that's the way it played out. The Eagles' defense actually had the key couple turnovers with the forced work on Brock Purdy and Josh Johnson fumbling. Then there was 3 sacks, so really limited. We thought they were going to have a lot more, but they dominated the game in terms of the 49ers not being able to put up more than 7 points in this one. So tough break all around, but the Eagles really carrying a lot of momentum. They've outscored their opponents 60-14 in the playoffs. They've only lost 1 game all season long. That was the Commanders game where they had all those turnovers with Jalen Hurts. Otherwise, Hurts only has 1 loss. Their other tough games came with Gardner Minshew at quarterback with the turnovers, 1 loss to the Cowboys. So when you're looking at Hurts, this offense really has not been stopped or contained all the way in any particular game, even against the 49ers. So I think there's a perception that the Eagles just owned the 49ers up front. No, they just didn't have any resistance there on the other side, and it became an easy game where the 49ers defense just got worn down. The Eagles could just stick with the run. So they were fortunate to grind through that game, not having the same degree of difficulty from an offensive challenge. But again, they'll get into the Super Bowl, and that's going to be better all around for these teams' numbers here. So really excited to see what can happen. And Gainwell continues to make a great case that he should be the feature back next year and the team can move on from Sanders in free agency. All right, we'll get into the Chiefs' takeaways. They were the winners as well, so they will be the other side of the equation, the road team from the AFC in the Super Bowl, and we will talk about the Chiefs and what they did against the Bengals and what they can do against the Eagles on the initial look at this game here on Locked On Fantasy Football. We told you at the top that this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by PrizePicks, and PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Like we said, it was very easy, and we cashed in pretty well here with some of our picks here. It's just making entries on PrizePicks. You're just working against the player projections, no competing against other players. So you're just going for more or less with the yardage or the touchdowns. That's what you're looking for here. And again, we said Kenneth Gainwell was going to outperform a little bit, working behind Sanders. Sanders will be limited in terms of his yardage. That's kind of played out here. We also like Patrick Mahomes to do well this week with his passing. Unfortunately, Brock Purdy got hurt in the game. Otherwise, he had a great completion percentage. So these are all things we've got to figure out here on PrizePicks, and the Super Bowl is going to be a lot of fun. Don't forget that PrizePicks has action on any sport that you watch there you can check out. It's very easy. It works like this. Pick 2 to 6 players, and they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection. You can win up to 25 times your money on the entry. PrizePicks offers projection on any sport that you watch. We talk about NFL, NBA, NHL, college basketball right now going strong here heading toward the tournament. So a lot of good stuff there. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less at PrizePicks. Safe and fast withdrawals, and currently operational in more than 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to PrizePicks.com to sign up to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to use the promo code Locked On to sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. That's only at PrizePicks.com or through the PrizePicks app. All right, we will continue the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football, looking at the Chiefs' takeaways as they were the victorious team in the AFC Championship game. Programming reminder here in between, there's a big thing going on that's not the Super Bowl, but it's the Senior Bowl, where we get a closer look at a lot of the top prospects, upperclassmen heading into the NFL for the draft. Cover a lot of draft at sportingnews.com. We'll have a lot of draft here for you as well. I do the mock drafts there that you can check out. Well, our team at Locked On is heading to the Senior Bowl. Get an insider analysis from the hosts that cover the NFL's next generation college and find out which NFL draft boards these players will be climbing all in one location. Subscribe to the Locked On NFL Draft podcast for nightly live shows from the Senior Bowl on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So exciting stuff there. The next big event after the Super Bowl will be the 2023 NFL Draft here. So really looking forward to that. A lot of good prospects, including Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud coming out early as the top quarterbacks in the class. Well, we know who the top quarterback in the class of the NFL right now is. And Joe Burrow went into Arrowhead. It was not Burrowhead. It was Mahomes' head, or whatever you want to call it. It was Mahomes' home. And he had 326 yards here, 2 touchdowns for Mahomes. So they basically abandoned the run, went pass happy, even though Mahomes had the gimpy ankle. Mahomes was game for it. He was fighting hard, made some throws off script. He was Mahomes, not really limited too much in this game. So just the balls downfield, he was more calculated with, but did complete some deep shots in this one. But 326 and 2. Then he had the key rush late in the game for 8 yards that Joseph Ossai hit him, and he got the 15 yards in the game-winning field goal set up. So his run was the biggest play, but Mahomes had a solid fantasy day with a high floor, 326 and 2, delivering for the Chiefs in this game. And how about Marquez Valdes-Scantling acting as his number 1 receiver? He needed him. Juju Smith-Schuster got hurt. He had 1 catch for 7 yards before that. Kadarius Toney got hurt. He had 1 catch for 9 yards. Mecole Hardman returned from injury, grounded through it. He had 2 catches for 10 yards as well as 2 rushes for 7. So Hardman, Smith-Schuster, and Toney were hardly blips on the radar. You had Jerick McKinnon have 4 rushes for 1 yard, 2 catches for 17 yards. So all these guys were non-factors. MVS steps up big time, 8 targets, 6 catches, 116 yards, a great touchdown in the middle of the field where he just beat Mike Hilton, the outstretched arm there for that score. Travis Kelce had the early touchdown, 7 for 78 and 1. So His volume was halved from the divisional playoff game last week against the Jaguars, but the Bengals played special attention to him, but he still came through 778 and 1 and more of a possession red zone receiver this week. But Valdez Scantling was the big savior of the day with a lot of limitations of this receiving corps. They really struggled. Sky Moore wasn't quite ready to create separation. So we'll see about Smith, Schuster, and Tony and their availability. We'll see if Hardman can be healthier here. McKinnon really took a backseat here to Isaiah Pacheco, by the way. 5 catches, 59 yards for Pacheco. So Pacheco showed that he had some burst as a receiver as well. So this could lead to Pacheco being their lead back in 2023. I love it. 10 carries as well, 26 yards. They didn't really stick with the run all that much, but Pacheco was an extension of it with his receiving here, and he proved he's a pretty good receiver. I think the question why he dropped into the 7th round is that he was a bit of a straight line power runner, but he's shown a little bit more speed and burst here with that role. He's also shown more versatility than he did at college at Rutgers. So that's what you're seeing with Pacheco develop. They loved him early in training camp. He's really paying off now as a key little extra playmaker there. So MBS and Pacheco saved the day along with Kelsey for Mahomes with some other receiver and running back issues in this game. So love that. And going forward, I mean, these are some tough guys. I mean, Pacheco's a power runner. The Eagles can struggle with that quite a bit. Kelsey, the Eagles have been pretty decent against the tight end, but they did give up some space to George Kittle with their tight end coverage with safety and linebackers. So Kelsey can be a key element. And MBS, if he can work the slot and get away from James Bradbury and Darius Slay and work a little bit on Vontae Maddox, he has a shot in this game to continue to be productive, especially those injuries linger for Smith, Schuster, and Tony. So good stuff all around for the Chiefs. Really manufacturing more and more without Tyreek Hill as they need, as they lose bodies. So good adjustment totally for the Chiefs as long as they had Mahomes and Kelsey out there creating the attention with their connection. It's going to happen, and it did. And how about the defense? 5 sacks of Joe Burrow. Chris Jones had never gotten a sack in his matchups against the Bengals of late. And Joe Burrow, he gets 2 in this game, 1 early, 1 to close the door late here on the final drive by the Bengals. So great performance by Chris Jones and this defensive line. Frank Clark also getting involved with a sack and a half. So the players for the Chiefs, their best front 4 players really came through in this game, much like the Eagles. Hassan Reddick and their key guys came through with pressure. Also 2 interceptions on the back end from that young secondary. So really great performance overall by the Chiefs, offensively, defensively. So we can look at the referees and officials and what they did against the Bengals and whatnot. But I thought the Chiefs had their best game ever against the Bengals, just the way they controlled things and did it one-dimensionally with Mahomes being limited as a runner, not getting a lot from the traditional running game. So good manufacturing of offense, extending plays on 3rd down. A lot of good things happened for the Chiefs and got a few penalties also to work their way. But good performance overall for the Chiefs. They put themselves in position to win the game with a cleaner game overall than the Bengals. All right, speaking of the Bengals, we'll talk about them and the 49ers and what the offseason is shaping up for those 2 teams here on Locked On Fantasy Football as we close the door on what we see in the conference championship and slowly turn the page to the Super Bowl. We will have a lot of Super Bowl content coming your way, but we'll also dive into some off-season content as well. I'll have some free agent lists and all that good stuff for you as we move forward here, as well as I'll explore my mock draft, their pre-Super Bowl. So we'll do some draft, we'll do some free agency, and then set up Super Bowl and what's going to happen in 57 next week. So we'll table that a little bit, but we will talk a little bit about some of the basic Super Bowl storylines here for you later in the week. But good stuff. We'll table all the game-specific stuff for next week. So excited about that. This year, when you're watching the Super Bowl, the only app you need is FanDuel and FanDuel Sportsbook, and it's going to be the easiest way to get in on all the action. It's America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America. As I said, FanDuel, and if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with no sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. Really easy. You can download the app, and if you're in the state where it's good to go, you're fine here. And it's fantastic here. The Super Bowl is a good time to get in on sports betting, especially on FanDuel, because they're going to take care of you the right way. And it's going to be so easy to play that you can figure out and find all the bets that are available to you there. The props are fantastic to play with the yardage and the touchdowns and all that good stuff. So Super Bowl gives you a lot of action for just one game. And FanDuel Sportsbook app is going to be safe, secure, and super easy to use to help you get there. So I do like, again, these offenses going pretty high here. Jalen Hurts, initially, I think he's going to have to pass a lot more. And A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith are going to hit some numbers in this one. I do like the Chiefs with Travis Kelce quite a bit as well. So I think we'll have the offensive explosion we expect. So get in on the player-specific action there with the props. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly once you put up your Super Bowl bets there at FanDuel Sportsbook. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/locked on to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, it is time to close the show looking at the takeaways from the teams that lost in the conference championship game. Let's start with the 49ers here. Yeah, tough break on Brock Purdy. We'll see. It was like a collateral ligament in his elbow under there. So we'll see if he needs to get surgery or does it heal on its own. He's a seventh-round rookie, of course. Trey Lance coming off the broken ankle. You have Jimmy Garoppolo with the broken left foot. Man, there's a lot to navigate here for the 49ers. Do they just go with Purdy as their starting quarterback, or is it a Purdy versus Lance battle? Do they bring back Jimmy Garoppolo at a cheaper price here to be the veteran contingency for both, or do they simply let him walk and let him get a starting job elsewhere, maybe with the Buccaneers or Jets or some other team that's looking for a starting quarterback here in 2023? So a lot of questions asked. I would expect Jimmy G is gone. So just debating Purdy versus Lance, there's a chance that the 49ers would just make this a competition between the two second-year players now in 2023. I don't think they'll add a third guy into this mix here. So they're in good shape either way. I think Lance, there's still a lot to be seen from him because we didn't see him for too long. He got hurt in that week 2 game against the Seahawks. So 49ers have a little bit of an unknown with Lance. They have a much bigger sample size with Purdy, so tough decision to make there at quarterback, how you want to facilitate the key weapons. And for now, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk all under contract with no questions there. Ayuk will have a contract year coming up in 2024 to figure out what to do with. So after his rookie deal, so you have those guys and Christian McCaffrey. They're not going to move him at all. He's not a luxury pick. He was a necessity here down the stretch. He was really their star. This is the first game that they lost against the Eagles that McCaffrey played a full game and not just arrived on a short week. So really impressed with Christian McCaffrey here. And he's going to be a focal point of this offense going forward. I think there's going to be a big case with this scoring streak at the end of the season. McCaffrey is back in everyone's good graces as the number 1 pick in fantasy football. Just too good of an offense, too explosive, too consistent scoring. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is, Purdy or Lance. Lance could actually help McCaffrey here with his running ability. McCaffrey definitely earned that. And what most impressive here, stayed fully healthy. He played through the calf injury. I didn't say that there was anything that limited him in that game against the Eagles. So love McCaffrey and the upside in a full season of 49ers offense. I mean, I'm just excited. I mean, it's not the Panthers offense. Kyle Shanahan, nothing's going away. McCaffrey's the perfect fit. So I think he has a monster year. He could put up 20 TDs. Again, health is the only concern with McCaffrey, but he's in this prime now. The 49ers were careful with his usage with Mitchell and Mason and all these other guys down the stretch. So McCaffrey getting good full offseason to rest, be with his new team for that duration, I think he'll get really more absorbed into this offense. So really excited about what Christian McCaffrey can do as a full-time 49er in 2023 in fantasy. So get ready for that, but the early debates can start. McCaffrey should be on the top of the board. If you're looking at half-point PPR, full-point PPR, that's the thing, is we're looking at receivers a lot. McCaffrey is also part receiver there. So that makes him clearly the best bet right now to be the number 1 overall pick over anyone else that you would consider there. I don't think it's even close there unless you're looking at super flex and have to make quarterback a priority early. All right, let's go to the Bengals. Their big quarterback question is Joe Burrow. How much to pay him? They're going to have to probably get to $50 million with the contract annually here. So that's going to push a cap hit for them. They got T. Higgins. Do they have to move him? He was a second-round pick in the same 2020 draft that Burrow was taken at first overall. So really they have to make a decision there. Can they afford Higgins and Burrow with Jamar Chase's contract also coming up? Much like what we saw with the Cowboys with Amari Cooper. Then move Cooper because they knew they had to play CeeDee Lamb pretty soon. So some things could develop here with T. Higgins, but I think the Bengals need to make one more Super Bowl run while they can with Joe Burrow's status here and the way he's playing and some of the other players and pieces that are intact before his contract really hampers them at other spots here. So really the only question mark here is how much he gets paid over the course of the season and if they can keep Higgins and working it. So I think they'll find a way to keep Higgins and Chase together for at least one more season with Burrow to make it work. Now, they're going to have to make some sacrifices to their two starting safeties, Jesse Bates and Von Bell are free agents, so they probably will need to find some rookie help there. You also have some concerns free agency-wise. Hayden Hurst had a pretty good first year there as a tight end on a one-year deal for the Bengals, so we'll see if they bring him back on the cheap side here, the former Falcon and Raven. You also have Samaje Perine. He was a key guy catching passes. Do they just move on to Chris Evans behind Joe Mixon? Something to watch out for there too. So I don't think the Bengals are going to get too extra spendy at all. Knowing that they're a pretty tight organization. Sometimes they've also splurged in the past. Joby Awuzie, Trey Hendrickson, some of these other guys that they have. So they got to be careful here with the contracts going forward. So I don't think they're going to be superfluous and careless here, but I would expect Higgins stays, but I think Perine Hurst will have to see if they can bring them back in reasonable contracts to stay in this offense and keep it going for Joe Burrow and take one more shot at the Super Bowl with a lot of confidence with all their key pieces intact here in 2023. So there you have it. There's a breakdown of the Eagles and Chiefs. Congratulations to them as they move on to the Super Bowl. And the 49ers and Bengals, a disappointing end, but still a lot of promise ahead for both of those teams. And again, they'll answer the key questions quickly. Good coaching staffs, good front offices now. So looking forward to seeing those teams contending again and giving us a lot of fantasy football points through the regular season as well in 2023. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Subscribe to Locked On NFL Podcast and get daily conversation on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis of the biggest games, the NFL key predictions every Friday. We know that was a big part going into the conference championship games. And Monday, that's today, local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this is Vinnie Iyer. Have a great day, and we'll catch you tomorrow as we start looking at my 2023 mock draft for pick number 30.